So, what we're going to do in this final session is to hear a little summary from each of the three breakout groups. So Jane is going to do transport, Helen is going to do energy and buildings, and then Susie is going to do land and biodiversity. So Jane, are you okay to start?
Yes, slightly breathless. I've got an echo. Is that coming across to you?
It's not too bad for me.
Well, the key points that came up in the transport feedback was that carbon reduction is absolutely possible, and it's really myth busting needed, because it's any carbon neutral or public transport has a poor image, and to improve its image it needs to be improving in reliability, price and frequency, but also integration when services match up. And Les Lumsden pointed out that's simply not to do with what's happening on the ground, it's how we think about it. It came over in all the presentations this morning and this afternoon, and all the discussions, that all sorts of alternative transport to cars are very, very practical, and that there are huge benefits to our health, the quality of our life, partly through increased independence. And I suppose people see cars as the most independent form of transport of all. But if we're going to get this balance between being a citizen and being a consumer, then we have to think of perhaps of the greater good, and that other services are so good that we're not tempted into our cars. The possibility of behavioural change came up, I think, all throughout the day, and is probably the biggest challenge. And one of the examples given was that the change in use of seat belts, which happened a long time ago, the attitudes to smoking have changed enormously, and attitudes to gender have. And so we can make these changes, and part of the myth busting is to believe that we can make those changes. Some of the more specific points that came up is that bikes can be used for deliveries. There's something called a cargo bike, which looks like a bit like an old butcher's bike, only obviously very sophisticated and maneuverable, and they could be used in this sort of area. And another possibility is that deliveries could be modelled on the postal service, rather than all of us having things at different times of the day. It could be a little bit more scheduled, and that would help to tackle the whole issue of vans, which are growing in their in number, and perhaps also not very good models of employment. I think through the sustainable transport groups in Shropshire, and Denise Thompson is the person to contact for that, car sharing was discussed as a real possibility. They're established, but could become more popular. And popularity came up as a bit of an issue in transport behavioural change, because those who want to be re-elected don't necessarily want to do something that's unpopular. And the Netherlands came up as an example of very good practice. And it's not just because it's flat there, it's also because they have made policy decisions. A very interesting contribution was about new technology, and Michael Cheshire, we have 3 professors with transport, a visiting professor at Southampton University, is developing locally generated hydrogen, and that's something that he feels could be used for local transport, and he's going to join the group. So success criteria would be behavioural change, and perhaps some of that is linked to skills development. just a very quick anecdote. I had to do a speed awareness course recently, and it was great. And it was the first bit of training about driving I'd had in over 40 years of driving. And that just seems, you know, slightly mad, really. And I wonder if some of the behavioural change we need could come about through skills development. And I think that's probably 3 minutes. Have I been fair to the transport theme, Steve? Good. You're muted, Richard.
Sorry, that's the second time I've done that today. That's hopefully going to be the last. Yeah, so thanks, Jane. Really good. And yeah, thanks for the vote of double thumbs up there, Steve. So Helen, if you could do the same for energy and buildings, please, that'd be fabulous. You're muted, Helen, at the moment. Helen, can you hear me?
Yes, sorry.
Oh, fantastic, thank you.
Computer jumping around all over the place. I will try. The areas we talked about were influencing awareness raising and education with some really good models from Bishop's Castle and Herefordshire Green Network of how we can get on board some of the local authorities and agencies. We looked at community energy generation, and there are really good models of how that's happening. And the very strong point, I think, was the need for bigger scale. So Gordon was telling us about Big Solar Co-op, which is national, which could really help local community energy groups, either economies of scale and making local groups more manageable, so it didn't take over your whole life, sharing risks, and actually running things more cheaply. And they're progressing with 5 sites across the country at the moment. Retrofit, near to my heart, and it's not easy. Simon shared that the area most difficult is actually where people can pay, where the progress is a lot less developed than with people who can't pay, where there have always been one way or another kind of grants and support to help people do that. And I wonder whether the issue is actually reaching people who can pay. And it certainly came up, you know, how do people find trusted installers? There is definitely a need to go back there, if you like, because certainly in the past in Lightfoot we've done that. And social justice is really important in retrofit. A large proportion of people cannot afford to do what is in fact can be really expensive and is not it's not straightforward. It's not one size fits all. But really time to have another go, and a Marches Wide initiative is what we perhaps need. We also talked about business, supporting good business practice that overlaps with who are the good installers. Gordon suggested we should make more use of the LEP, which is sort of unknown territory for me, but it should be possible as a very business centered partnership to make a link up there. I think the big message coming through is more collaboration, really, is informing each other, working together, going to a bigger scale, really. I don't know, does anybody want to add anything? I didn't get a feeling of there certainly were 1 or 2 people who wanted to sign up to be part of taking this forward. I didn't get a strong feeling of how many people are doing that. Does anyone want to add anything? Lorraine, have I missed anything?
Just say, Helen, we've got we've got training slots available to people in Shropshire to learn how to identify possible community energy sites.
Right.
Sounds fine to me, Helen. Thank you.
There's lots and lots of areas where we can be doing something. We need to be reaching out and getting people involved.
Great. Thank you, Helen, and thank you others that have contributed to that that group. So the final group to hear back from is Susie, Susie Wynne Wilson from Land and Biodiversity.
Hi. Okay, can you hear me all right?
Perfectly.
Good, good. Okay, well, I'll gallop through this. I mean, there's a lot of, we went through a lot. We had 4 really good speakers. We started off with Phil Holden of the AONB, and he made various key points. Land is, as well as being a source of emissions, can be part of the solution. The very important point of not just focusing on carbon, the equal need for nature recovery and building up of networks of good habitat, rivers, woods, heath and grasslands, linked across the landscape to other sites, the need to renaturalize our rivers, ruffling hilltops, peatlands, re-wetting, restoring floodplain, wetlands, etc., expanding tree cover in sensitive ways, and farming to maximize the whole range of benefits to society, finding the right balance. And this is all about restoring biodiversity and ecosystem functioning, which is the fundamental point, as well as helping to reduce emissions and storing carbon. So there's a huge amount to do, connecting people up. Now our second speaker, Daphne, is running just on 0.8 of an acre. I thought at first it said 8 acres, but no, it's 0.8 of an acre, a market garden near Bishop's Castle. And she's really moved from her academic work to be putting everything into practice. And it was very inspiring. She's been going for 3 years, I think. And her key points are that small market gardens can quickly adapt to sudden supply chain disruptions and be part of a community resilience response. And that small-scale horticulture can have multiple positive impacts when managed ecologically and with a focus on the local community. And there's a real local demand for vegetables and a need for more market gardens. And short food supply chains have great appeal in the face of disruptions in conventional systems. And it's been dramatically demonstrated this year with COVID. So generally building networks of small producers and local routes to local customers is a very good thing. And she described her experience, you know, which was very inspiring. Okay, so the number 3 was Mark Measures, organic farmer, advisor, soil expert. And again, he talked about agriculture being responsible for emissions and the importance of soil management and ruminant enteric fermentation and manure management, and how farming can address its impact on climate change. And already there are technological developments and existing practices familiar to farmers and growers. That, however, I think his point was fundamental change to the farming system is needed, and away from finite inputs to integrated agroecological and organic systems, which are based on biology, and that these will have multiple benefits apart from greenhouse gas emissions. So minimizing use of resources, reduce pollution, etc. But it's going to require commitment right the way through the chain, from policy, research, farmer incentives and the consumer, and that farmers and their livelihoods are central to making this happen. Now, lastly, we had James Evans, who's also a farmer. He's a beef farmer, and he gave his personal experience, which was, again, very inspiring. He's been farming conventionally for 20 years on a family farm, and they thought they were pretty environmentally friendly, but they were told by new owners they had to go organic 4 years ago. This was horrifying and scary. They thought it'd be uncommercial, had to seek help, and admit to their limitations. There was never enough grass, had to develop a changed mindset. Very frightening. They got help. They focused on organic grass-fed beef and sheep. It all felt like a cult with new jargon. And he said getting farmers to change is the biggest challenge. They can go broke if it doesn't work. It's easier to stay with what you know. But he has found that actually there's a huge benefits, reduced bills from no fertilizer, feed, straw, silage, labour, diesel and machinery, all greatly reduced. Increased profit, and what was very impressive was how good he expressed it. It felt so good to be a food producer, not just a commodity producer, and linking farmers with food. So there was a lot of lively discussion, a lot of stuff on the chat, lots of questions and links with all kinds of things. I mean, very difficult to keep up with it all. But a lot of questions about behavioural change and about people rather than technology or land use specifically, and how do we mainstream these ideas with large commercial farms. And it has to be top down as well as bottom up. I mean, we're talking about bottom up here. It's not just about food production. Where do we find the spiritual, emotional and human resources to achieve these kind of changes? And how do we break out of our bubbles? Okay, I think that's all I've got to say. Don't know if anybody wants to add anything. Nick, are you all right with that?
Thank you. I certainly don't want to add anything. No, it was good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Susie. And to Helen and Jane, I think it's really important that we had those summaries so we all knew what had gone on in those other rooms. So it's 10 to 3, so we just have a few short minutes left just to kind of draw the day to a close. I think it's been wonderful, hopeful and vibrant. I mean, Margaret Mead always gets wheeled out at times like this when I'm talking, but never doubt that a small group of thoughtful citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So tell your friends and neighbours, continue to lead by example. And I think it's really crucial that we create what I call the political space to allow our local politicians to be more courageous. I still think many of them don't think that too many people care about this. So the more that they know that people like us care about this allows them to be more ambitious in what they do. And of course, talking of Shropshire Council, next May in 2021, we get the chance to choose elected members who might take this issue really, really seriously. Joe has suggested that we might wish to keep this group together in some way through sharing of our contact details. That's something that the organising committee will need to explore with a regard to data protection and all of that. But that's a great idea, Joe. We'll seriously consider that. And in terms of signing up, Lizzie at 1441 in the chat posted 3 links to the shropshireclimateaction.co.uk website to allow people to sign up to the working groups. And fabulously already we've had 30 sign-ups, so 3 have signed up for energy, 6 have signed up for transport, and 21 have signed up for land. So there's only 71 people left in the 101 participants at the moment to sign up, so you've still got a few minutes left to do that. And obviously it would be lovely to have, obviously we've already got quality in energy and transport, it would be nice to have a bit more quantity as well. So maybe we should think about the Green Homes grant scheme voucher that I think Simon said might be launching any day now. That might be something to think seriously about for yourselves, and certainly also to tell others about. And of course, Mark Fermor said hello. He's leading the Shropshire-wide Climate Action Partnership. And that website, www.zerocarbonshropshire.org, is the place to go and find out about that. But clearly, the Ludlow constituency, the South Shropshire work will feed very much into that as well. So please be nurturing, be dogged, be hopeful, and together we will see the change we all hope for. As Elizabeth Gilbert said, the universe buries strange jewels deep within us all, and then stands back to see if we can find them. Thanks again to the conference team, especially to all of you, to John, Simon, Nick and Richard for their presentations and work this morning, and for the working groups and all of the contributions. And again to all of you for being here until the very end. Hopefully next time we will see each other in glorious real world 3D. And until then, stay safe and keep your sparkle. And I just thought we would leave the Zoom room open so you can leave when you like. It's a bit weird always at these conferences where you have this kind of sudden shock of being kind of kicked out. So we'll leave the Zoom room open and you can just disappear when you like. And I thought it would be really appropriate now for us all to unmute and to give a round of applause to everybody, to ourselves, to the organisers, to the speakers and to the future. So on the count of 3, if we could all unmute and give a massive clap, that would be fabulous. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you, Richard, for holding it together.
Thank you.
Can I just
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Richard, can we just give a special thank you to Richard, because thank you for comparing so very well. Makes all the difference.
Yeah. 6 minutes early.
Yes. Brilliant timekeeping.
Thank you.
And what about Esme behind the scenes, who's made it work?
Many thanks to Esme too.
Thank you.